Hey guys, I am here. I was not. Now I am. Hello. Okay, so everybody's here. Does everybody have their stuff with them in case they have questions? Okay, Josh has a lot of questions. Hopefully we have enough time to get through them all today. So questions today should come from, I think it's 4-5 to, again, 4-9. We should be taking, or I'm sorry, 4-6 to 4-9. We should have covered, we covered through 4-5 last week. And then the exam was, yeah, through 4-9. 4-6 to 4-9. Let me grab my book and get it out. Sorry, I've been working on stuff all morning and I am not prepared for class today. I'll take 10 points off my grade. 4-6. 4-6. So, who has questions and are they on 4-6? Or what questions do you have on 4-6? Okay, Josh says just 16. Joanne has none. Abigail, do you have any 4-6 questions? Then we'll go in order. Okay, so number 16, that's not too many. Mama's Pizza. Pushing buttons. Okay. Number 16 is Mama's Pizza charges $12 for a large cheese pizza and 90 cents for each additional topping. Pizza Palace charges $14 for a large pizza, but only 40 cents for each additional topping. So how far did you get, Josh? Sure. Okay. Well, the first part A says write an equation for each pizza shop describing the cost of a large pizza in terms of the number of toppings. So if we're looking just at Mama's Pizza, we want to know what the cost is. How would we figure that out? What's the cost if you have no toppings at Mama's? Okay. Yeah, it's just gonna be $12, right? And then if you get a topping, you have to add how much per topping? Yeah, so we're gonna write 0.90, and then they told us the topping, they want it to be T. So we have a cost, and we figure it out by taking the price of the pizza plus the cost of the toppings times the number of toppings. So if we have no toppings, it's just $12. If we have one, it's $12.90. Two, it's $13.80, so on and so forth, right? So you can always check to make sure it works by checking the first few, because you should be able to figure those out even without an equation, right? So you wouldn't want to do this by the long way for like 30 toppings, although I can't imagine what 30 toppings would put on a pizza. But so the equation would help when you get really big numbers, but the first few numbers you should be able to kind of brute force figure out what it is anyways, and then check and see if your equation works. So this is at Mama's. And then the cost at Pizza Palace is how much? How would you write their whole equation? Yeah, so 14 plus 0.40 times t. Don't forget the t, right? Because the t tells you how it changes as the number of toppings changes. You have to have a variable there. So that's part A. It asks for writing an equation. Does that make sense how we did that? Okay. And then part B is for how many toppings are the pizza prices at the two shops equal? So what are we trying to figure out? What variable? Yeah, we want to figure out what t is when what is equal. Well, what's the question say? For how many toppings at the pizza are the pizza prices at the two shops equal? Right? So we want to know where the prices are the same, the cost. So we want these two numbers to be equal. So if these two are equal, right, that means that these two have to be equal. So we can rewrite it as 12 plus 0.90t equals 14 plus 0.40t. And now it's just an equation that you have to solve. Right? Okay, so you can solve it from there. 4-7. Who has questions? I'm going to clear this since we're out of 4-6. So 4-7, what questions do you guys have? Okay, all of the lesson. That's very vague. So equivalent formulas. Did you, so just reading through, you couldn't understand what it was? Okay. So the big idea for 4-7 is we can have a formula with two variables, right? Just like we did with the cost and the toppings. And so we can have cost equals something in terms of toppings, or we could have toppings equal to some form of the cost, right? We could have solved one of those for t. Those two formulas would be equivalent formulas because they come from the same statement. So if we had the c equals 12 plus 0.9t, right? But we could solve this for t. So we could have c minus 12 equals 0.90t, and then c minus 12 divided by 0.90 equals t, right? When we do that, now this equation and this equation are equivalent formulas. That's what this whole section was about. That you can take one formula and get a different formula out of the same equation, but they're equivalent because you're just rearranging it, you're not changing it. So the example they gave was finding temperature, right? So we can have Fahrenheit in terms of Celsius, or we could have Celsius in terms of Fahrenheit. So it really depends which way you're going, right? If you're given Celsius, yeah. Sometimes you're given Celsius, you want to find Fahrenheit. Sometimes you're given Fahrenheit and you want to find Celsius. So it really depends. And you have as many equivalent expressions as you have variables. So in the guided example number 2, You have volume, which has volume, radius, and height. So you have 3 different equations that could all be equivalent because you could solve for any one of those variables. You good? Did you try the problems, or you just got stuck on the reading and didn't go? Okay. So try the problems and see how you do, and then message me if you get stuck somewhere. How about 4-8? Anybody have questions? Okay. Josh, ooh, 16 again. You mean number 3 in the covering the ideas section, Abigail? Or you have 3 questions? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Only 1 question. So Josh wants 16, 18, and 24. You want 16. I'm seeing a pattern. Okay. So for 16, I'm going to clear the board again. So for 16, we have a number line, right? And it goes from, well, we have a point on it at what, negative 3.7 up to 1.6, right? So 0 is somewhere in here, somewhere in between the two. And we want to know an interval shown with plus or minus notation. So plus or minus means you pick a point in the middle, the exact middle, and then you can go the same distance plus or the same distance minus to get to your 2 endpoints. So in order for these values to be the same, your plus and minus jumps, you have to be in the exact center. Okay, so the way you figure that out is we want to know how far apart these points are. Well, 1.6 is 1.6 from 0, right? And then 3.7, negative 3.7 is 3.7 from 0. It's just to the left, right? So how far apart are they all together? Okay, so they're 5.3 altogether. Half of that would be one of these 2 jumps, right? So if we divide that by 2, we get 2.65, right? So that's going to be our jump. We're going to have plus or minus 2.65 because that's how far we are if we come from the center. And then the way you can figure out where the center is to move that far from either one of your endpoints. So if we do 1.6 and we subtract 2.65, we end up at negative 1.05, right? That means that's what our center is, negative 1.05. So if we start in our center and we go the same distance to the right, which would be positive, or to the left, which would be negative, we'll get to our 2 endpoints of 1.6 and negative 3.7. And then to check to make sure that you got the right answers and you didn't mess something up, you can actually do it, right? So negative 1.05 plus 2.65 should give you 1.6, and negative 1.05 minus 2.65 should give you negative 3.7. And if it doesn't, it means either you picked the wrong center point or you picked the wrong distance to jump. Where'd I lose you, Josh? Okay, so the distance between negative 3.7 and 1.6 was 5.3, right? So half that distance would be 2.65. Do you agree? Okay, So then that means 2.65 is your jump, right? So from the center, you would go 2.65 either way because those two add up to give you your whole. And then negative 1.05 came from, I picked one of my endpoints, so I just picked 1.6, and I subtracted my jump, so 2.65. That gets me back to the center. And that tells me that my center must be at negative 1.05. Does that make sense? Okay. So we had 16, 18, and 24. So that was 16. What's 18? Did you guys, so I guess this is Josh's question. Josh, did you make a table for number 18? Okay. So a table just means, so I'm going to clear this real quick. So imagine you have a table, and yours can be vertical or horizontal. It doesn't really matter, but following the way the book does it, right? We have X and Y. And the equation we were given was Y equals 3X plus 5, right? So if we pick some values for X, right? Let's start at negative 2. So if we put negative 2 in, we get 3 times negative 2 plus 5, so that's negative 6 plus 5 would be negative 1, right? And then we could pick another value, so negative 1. So we get 3 times negative 1 plus 5 equals, so 3 times negative 1 is negative 3 plus 5 is 2. And then we could pick 0. 3 times 0 plus 5. So 3 times 0 is 0 plus 5 is 5. Are you with me so far, Josh? Does that make sense? What kind of? What doesn't make sense? Where I got the X values? Okay. So really you just pick any values. Generally you want to straddle 0 for what you're doing, but well, the direction said make a table and a graph of Y equals 3X plus 5. So this is a table. And then we'll make a graph in a minute. Okay, so if I kept going with the table, I'm just going to fill in some numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I have confidence that you could fill in the rest of this table, right? We can go on and on if we wanted. So 5 gives us 28, 4 gives us 23. Okay, and then I'm going to leave these values for you to figure out. Okay, so first we want to make a table, and then we need to make a graph. So a graph of this, how do we graph something in slope-intercept form? Where do we start? Okay, we've been graphing for a while now. You should be able to graph a number, a line in slope-intercept, right? This is the slope, this is the intercept. So the intercept is where we cross the y-axis at 5, right? And then, actually, I'm going to move that down a little because looking here, I'm seeing I'm getting really big y values. So let's put 5 down here, right? And then my slope is 3. So 3 tells me I'm going to go up 3 over 1, up 3 over 1, on and on, right? So at 0 here, this is 1, 2, 3. Those are my x values. So that's 0, -1, -2, -3. So for -2, I was at -1, right? So for -2, I was at -1. So somewhere here. And then for -1, I was at 2, so I was up above the axis, right? So I can draw a line. Once you have about 3 points, you can generally draw a line. You really only need 2, but a 3 makes sure that you're not messing anything up, right? So these are all just points. So this is a point, this is a point, that's a point, this can be a point, that can be a point. Agree? Okay. And then, so now we've made a table and a graph. Now we want to highlight the x coordinates on the table and the part of the graph where 3 plus 5x is between -2 and 23. So 3 plus 5x is our what value? Y, yeah. So we want to know where our y value is between -2 and 23. Well, this is is greater than -2, right? Wait a minute. What's something wrong here? -2 should be. Hold on. It's 3 plus 5x. I wrote 3x plus 5. So you will have to recalculate these. Okay? I wrote the wrong equation. It's supposed to be 3 plus 5x. But we just did it for 3x plus 5. Yeah, I was thinking out loud. That's why I kind of mumbled. Okay, so the problem tells you to do 3 plus 5x. We just did 3x plus 5. I dyslexied it. So these values are not good for the actual problem. Okay, so you'll need to recalculate those, but the process is the same. These ones I copied out of the table, so these two are correct. Okay, so anyways, so you're gonna try and find values. So they wanted values that were between -2, 3 plus 5x, and less than 23, right? So we want values for y that are between -2 and 23. So you're just gonna circle those on the table. So maybe use a different color or something. So for this one, my value here is 23. It looks like all of these values are between -2 and 23. If your value doesn't go all the way to the end, you need to do one more value back, right? So here my y value only went to -1, not to -2. So I should go back and calculate what -3 is. So -3 put into this, I would get -4. So this would not be included then. That way I know whether or not I'm including that endpoint, right? So -1 would be included because it's greater than -2, but -4 is not, so we wouldn't include that. And then on the graph, you just find, so since this is the last point that would count, right? We want to be from here up to, it looks like 4. So here-ish. And we just color on the graph. That's what we want. Does that make sense? Besides using the wrong equation? Yeah. So for your homework, use the correct equation and get the correct values in here. But process is exactly the same. Okay. Well, hold on for a second, Abigail. Let's do 24, and then we'll finish up 4-8. Where are you stuck with 24? Because that's just plugging in numbers. That's where you're evaluating negative 4xy plus y minus x. And then they just give you values, right? So x equals 3, y equals 4. Did you have maybe 22? Okay. Yeah, this is just plugging in. Everywhere there's an x, you put a 3, 4, you put a y. All good. Okay, let's go back to 4-7. Does anybody else have questions on 4-8? Okay, Abigail, what was your question on 4-7? And then we'll go on to 4-9. 14. I like how prepared you guys are. You have questions ready. Okay, number 14. Right circular cylinder. So that we're rearranging it for H. So we have an equation for the surface area is 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h, right? So they give you this formula, and we want to solve it for h. Did you do that? Or were you stuck there? Okay, so all you're doing is you're going to take, you want h to be by itself. So we just need to rearrange this for h. Okay, so we have different variables, s, r, and h. So the first step we're going to do is we'll subtract away 2 pi r squared. Right? This is our c equals b plus ax, because h is the thing we want. Okay, so we're going to subtract away b, our 2 pi r squared. So we have s minus 2 pi r squared equals, because those will cancel. And then we have 2 pi r h. Now what are we going to do? Solve the left side for what? You mean solve the left side? What are we trying to do? Oh, nope, we don't need to do anything with that. This is already as distributed as it can get. I'm not sure how you could distribute it. Surface area is a variable, so it's perfectly fine to leave s there, and we're just subtracting 2 pi r squared. We want to get h by itself though, right? Right. So this is just 2 times pi times r squared. I'm not sure how you could distribute that anymore. You mean like actually multiply out 2 pi? Okay. That's okay. So just so you guys know, pi is a non-repeating, non-terminating decimal. It goes on forever and ever. So it's actually more accurate to write it as pi than to multiply it out. So if you did think you were supposed to multiply pi out so that you could get it into a single number, don't. It's actually better to leave it just as pi. And you don't have to, so some people like to do the whole swooshy thing. I don't care. After you've written it 5 million times, you just write it with a flat line. So as long as I can tell it's pi that you're writing, that's fine. Okay, So we want to get h by itself. What's happening to h right now? Yeah, by all of this stuff, right? So we want to divide by all of that stuff. So we have h equals, I'm going to just put h on the left because that's how we typically write stuff, 2 pi r squared divided by 2 pi r. So this is a perfectly acceptable answer. Or you can simplify it by splitting and making it s over 2 pi r minus 2 pi r squared over 2 pi r. And then you need to simplify. So this would simplify. So we get s over 2 pi r minus r. So either one of those would be totally fine. All right? And when you're doing something similar to this, these are equivalent equations. I don't care which one you give as long as it's correct. So if you gave something wrong, then obviously that would be wrong. But as long as both of these, yeah, and it doesn't help either. Like pi isn't actually a variable, it's a constant, but it's a symbol. So yeah, it gets kind of confusing. So if it helps, just keep circling what you're looking for. Sometimes when you get really complicated equations and you're on a roll, like speaking from experience in physics, I would start going and then halfway through realize I was solving for the wrong variable. So if it helps, just keep circling in each step what you're trying to solve to help keep yourself focused. Yeah. Okay, anything else from 4-7? Ooh, 20. Okay. Another word problem. So 20. According to the World Almanac and Book of Facts, the Middle East is reported to have 65% of the world's oil reserves. Altogether, Middle East crude oil reserves are estimated to total 686 billion barrels. How many barrels are estimated to be in the world's total crude oil reserves? So where'd you get stuck? Or how far did you get? Okay, you have, well, what is the 65% of? Well, how do we write 65% as a decimal first? Because that's, yeah, so we want 0.65. In equation form, you're almost never going to use it as an actual percent. You're going to generally write it as the decimal. So it's 65% of, which means multiplication, what? The total. Good. So let's just pick something. We don't want to reuse O for oil because O looks like 0. And lowercase t is sketchy too because it looks like plus. So I would generally recommend either use t or just stick with X or Y or something like that. So 65% of the total equals what? Yeah. Now, for a problem like this, I would not write it out as 686 billion with zeros because that's going to get really confusing because you can just give your answer in billions of barrels. So treat this like a single unit, billions of barrels. Okay? Now do you see how to do it? Yeah, that's okay. Sometimes it gets confusing setting it up, and then once it's set up, it seems really easy. So, yep, that's all you're going to do. And then just solve for t. And your answer will be in billions of barrels. I mean, you're not wrong if you wrote it out as 686 billion with zeros. It just means you're more likely to make a mistake because you have a whole lot more numbers to deal with. Okay, anything else from 4-7? 4-8. Everybody's good? Four, 9. What questions do you guys have? Okay. Did you guys find it was harder to do this without the videos I made? Or were the videos not really something you watched? I'm curious. Okay, so near the end of the chapter, it would have been more helpful to have the videos. Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure that I'm not wasting my time making videos if they're not helpful for you guys. But if they're helpful, then I will. I did not get a chance to make videos for chapter 5 yet. I'm going to keep working on them, but it takes a lot of time to make the videos. So, okay. So Josh said number 20. Is that the first one? Or there are some before 20 that you want to go through? I'd rather go through in order if you have them. I'll assume 20 is the first one. Okay, so 20 says it's recommended teenagers get 8.5 plus or minus 0.7 hours of sleep. So write a double inequality. So this is kind of the opposite of the one we did the other day, right? Or earlier. So the other one, you had a graph and you had to write the inequality, or the plus or minus. Now you've got to write it as a double inequality, right? So we want 8.5 plus or minus 0.7 hours of sleep. So Josh, how far did you get? Did you get A, the double inequality? Okay, so just looking at this, what does that mean? 8.5 plus or minus 0.7 hours of sleep. What's the minimum that teenagers should get? Okay. Nope. Can somebody help Josh out? What's the least amount they should get? Maybe Josh didn't get enough sleep. We'll find out if your sleep fell in the right range. Yeah, how'd you get that, Joanne? Good. So if we subtract, we start in the middle and we subtract 0.7, we get our minimum, right? So 8.5 minus 0.7 equals 7.8. So that's the minimum he should get. So Josh, what's the most a teenager should get, or that's recommended? How do you think we would get that? Yeah. So 8.5, right? Plus 0.7. So 9.2. Good. So this, are you guys okay with what this symbol means? Or I guess Josh, this is plus, we would say this plus or minus. Okay. So either you go across the top and add, or you go across the bottom and subtract. It's going to be real helpful when we get to quadratics. So this is the smallest amount, right? And this is the greatest amount. That's okay. So that means that the total number of sleep recommended should fall between 7.8 and 9.2, right? So H needs to be greater than or equal to 9.8 and less than or equal to 9.2. So that would be a double inequality for part A. How about an absolute value inequality? Not quite. So to go from here to here, what did we do? Yeah, we subtracted 0.7, right? And then to go to here, from here to here, we added 0.7. So we know the change is always going to be 0.7, right? Whether we're adding or subtracting. And the way we can avoid using the adding or subtracting, start out by making this equals, and we'll adjust that in a minute, but is to use an absolute value, right? Because it means the difference, whether it's positive or negative, is 0.7. The difference is always going to be the difference between what and what. How do we get if we have some random h value? We know it has to be within 0.7 of what? Yeah. So we want to do h minus 8.5 because that's going to tell us that no matter what we have, right, we end up with 0.7 as a difference. And really we want 0.7 or less. And the way you can check to make sure this works is to put your values in. So if you have 9.2 minus 8.5, we take the absolute value, that should be less than or equal to 0.7. So it should be, so 9.2 minus 8.5 is 0.7, right? So the absolute value works. If I do the same thing going the other way, so 7.8 minus 8.5, right? 7.8 minus 8.5 is negative 0.7. But when we use the absolute values, it gets rid of that negative. So we just get positive, we just get 0.7, right? Which is less than or equal to. And any value in between 7.8 and 9.2 will give you a value that is less than or equal to 0.7. So you can check other values in between just to make sure that it works. If you have this symbol the wrong way, it won't work. Any questions, Josh, or does that make sense? Okay. What else do you have from 4.9? I'll clear the board. 22. Okay. So you have a graph Zoe used to solve. That's a fun graph. Okay. I'm going to try sketching it. I warn you, it's probably not going to look totally right. So let's see. 2, 4, 6, 8. And then all the marks are 2s, right? So 2, 4, 6, 8. Do, 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 do. Okay. So it looks like there's an intersection right here. There's one. No, by 0.8. So somewhere, or 8. Somewhere down here. And then 7, 8. So here. So she's got one line goes this way. And then let's change the color. The other line seems to go from here up through there, and then from here up through there. Do you see there's 2 lines, Josh? I mean, it looks like 3, but it's actually, one is a V-shaped graph, and then one's a line. Okay, so we want to know, using that and the equation, absolute value of 3x minus 5 minus 8 is less than x plus 1. Oh, and these points are labeled. So 7, 8, -1, 0. And the other one's not labeled. So just these two intersection points. So we want to use the graph and the intersection points to give the solution. So the solution looks like it is from here. Those are supposed to intersect there. So did you get anywhere on this one? Okay, so we want to know the values of this absolute value when it's less than x plus 1. So we want to know, where is this red graph less than the purple graph? Because the purple graph is x plus 1. I guess that would have helped to know. So the purple graph is x plus 1. And this graph is the absolute value of 3x minus 5 less than 8. So we want to know, where's the red graph less than the purple graph? Well, that happens from here all the way back up to here, right? So what values of x is that true for? What's the smallest value of x where the red one is less than the purple? Yeah. So -1 is the smallest one. And then what's the biggest value? Nope, up here where this intersection is. 7, yeah. So we want values of x that are between 1 and 7, right? Do we want to include those or not? Where they intersect, is the red graph smaller than the purple graph? No, it's not where they intersect, right? They're equal there, but they're not, it's not smaller. And we want to know just where it's smaller. So that would be the solution. If you couldn't figure it out using the graph, you could also just solve the inequality. I don't know if you guys know how to do that yet, though, right? So x plus 1. Well, yeah, you've done inequality work, right? You just haven't done. Okay. So then you'd add 8, right? So you get 3x plus minus 5. Absolute value less than x plus 9. And then you'd have to set up two inequalities, right? So, or you could just make it x plus, yeah. You'd have to set up two inequalities, right? Because one we're assuming is negative and one we're assuming is positive. But they wanted you to use the graph for this one because it's a little bit more straightforward. Any questions from 4.9? Any other questions? (24). So we're just moving through all the even ones. Okay. 24. So that's, we're going to solve the compound inequality and graph it. Were you able to solve it? Or is that one not actually one you need help with? Were you able to solve this one? Okay. So you're okay with it now? Any other ones? Graphing would be on a number line. So once you have it as, so inequalities, if they only have one variable, are on a number line. And then open circles, right, for without the equals, and closed circles for when you do have the equals. Good, Abigail? That's okay. This is a review, so it's probably something you haven't done for a little bit. That's why they do it, to kind of keep you fresh with all those other ideas. Now you're used to graphing stuff on a plane, so it's probably easy to forget you have number lines too. Okay, so Josh, do you have any other questions from 4-9? Okay, 28. I'm gonna clear this. Those word problems get you every time, don't they? Okay, Gail had $11.50 to spend on snacks for herself and her friends. She wanted to buy as many 85-cent energy bars as she could, in addition to 3 boxes of popcorn at 75 cents each and 3 juice bottles at $1.50 each. She set up an inequality and solved it by clearing decimals to find the number of set up an inequality and solved by clearing the decimals to find the number of energy bars she can buy. So, all of that to say, oh, okay, you got it? So when it talks about clearing the decimals, that just means multiply the whole thing by a multiple of 10 so that you're dealing with whole numbers. Okay. So anybody else have questions from 4-9? Or is chapter 4 good? I should get your chapter 3 test graded today or tomorrow at the latest. And then you guys should be working on chapter 5 starting today, right? 5-1 and 5-2 are today. 5-3 and 4 are tomorrow. It's kind of a push this week. And then it slows down a little bit. So you only have 1 section each on Thursday and Friday. So, I mean, you can change the pacing if you want. Do 2 sections today, 1 tomorrow, 2 sections Thursday, and 1 on Friday. Because we're doing a full year course in a semester. And next Friday is your midterm. We're halfway through. So the midterm is going to be online and multiple choice. When you take the midterm, you'll get to go through twice. So the first time through, anything you get wrong will be marked wrong, but it won't tell you what the correct answer is. And then anything you got wrong, you'll have an opportunity to go through a second time and redo those questions to try to bring up your grade. So you can take it once, study the sections that you got wrong, and then you can go back and rework those sections to try to bring up your grade. But it'll be online, it'll be multiple choice, kind of like the quizzes, only it'll be all multiple choice rather than, I don't think I'm gonna have any fill in the blank. But yeah, I don't actually know days. Let's see. I have my planner right next to me. That would be on, yes, the 2nd, next Friday. So everything through chapter 5 will be on the midterm. So, and you'll have a week to take it just like you did. So it's scheduled for next Friday, but you'll have a week to take it just like all the other tests. So your chapter 5 test is next Thursday. I will try to get those back to you as fast as I can so you can see how you did before you take your midterm. So I should be able to get back to you Friday morning. I work Thursday evenings and I teach all day. So depending on when you get chapter 5 test, the chapter 5 test in. So I guess typically you have a week to get the test in. but I would recommend getting the chapter 5 test in before you take the midterm so that you can see how you did. So if you turn it in on Thursday when it's due, I will try to get it back to you as fast as I can. I won't wait for I usually wait for everybody to get their test in and then grade it. But for chapter 5, I will get it turned around faster. I also figured out with the app on my iPad, I'm able to grade and I don't have to tell it to save all the markups. So there shouldn't be any problem with disappearing markups anymore. You guys should always have notes and stuff written, and it's a little easier for me to write notes. So you should see lots of feedback on your homework because I have an easier way to do it now. So if there's anything on there that you guys don't understand, please let me know. I do make jokes sometimes on papers, so please understand I'm just joking. I'm not making fun of you. But sometimes if I notice you guys are doing like the same thing, or you do something in an odd way, I may note it. But it's more of a teasing than a making fun of you. And if I ever do anything that you guys find hurts your feelings, please let me know. I'm really not trying to do that. But sometimes as a teacher, it's funny to see how you guys think. You come up with creative ways of doing stuff sometimes. So after a while, you get so used to doing stuff a certain way, it's just automatic and you don't think about more creative ways of solving them. And sometimes you guys come up with some good stuff. So sometimes I'm very impressed with how you guys come up with ways to solve stuff. So get stuff in as much as you can for chapter 5 before the midterm so that you have time to take it or get feedback before you take the midterm. And then I will see you guys next Tuesday and we'll go through anything. Next Tuesday, I'm going to focus on chapter 5 stuff, but I also want you guys to feel free to ask questions from anything from the first 5 chapters. I know that applying the mathematics and review questions that we go over in class, a lot of times those are things from earlier chapters. So if you guys have questions from earlier stuff before the midterm that you want to go through, please feel free to bring those to class. But otherwise, I will see you guys next Tuesday. And you're all doing very good so far. Bye, guys. No, that's okay, Josh. That's why we have class, so that you have a chance to ask questions. Math is not easy on your own. That's how you learn.